Hi everybody, welcome back. Thanks again for tuning into my channel, Wade Davis Tiny Living. If it's your first time here, welcome. And for all of you all returning, thanks a lot for coming back. So for the new ones though, be sure to hit the subscribe button and click the alert bell so you'll be alerted to any new videos that I have. So let's talk about the real ins and outs of going tiny. Many people have different reasons for going tiny. What's your reason? Why don't you leave your comments below so I can hear from you? I love to know what's going on. Well, it's reality check time. Just to be clear, this video really isn't meant to discourage or encourage anybody to go tiny. I just want to provide a little bit more information to help you along in your tiny house journey. And let me even share with you why I'm even doing this. So, I would like to retire in about 5 years, and I want to really just simplify my lifestyle, become debt free, and take advantage of new opportunities to serve others. So I looked into tiny homes, and so I found a builder and found a spot, at least in July 2019, in a small mobile home community. So it's only about 10 lots there. And so I found this spot, and then just 2 weeks before I was going to give my builder a deposit, the landowner called me and said the township has said I cannot put my tiny home in the mobile home park. So, I was left with no place to go. And I'm glad she called before I had just given money to have a tiny home built that I didn't have a place to put it. So, are you surprised as I am? A mobile home park and you can't even put a tiny home there? Well, that's my story. That's how I got here. What's your story? Please share with us in the comments below. Now, back to why you're here. Going tiny is trendy, but it's not for everyone. Here are 5 things to consider before building a tiny home: lifestyle, finances, location, builders, and setup. So let's talk about it. So the obvious question, the first one is how are you with small spaces? Are you an organized person? With the amount of space, everything will have to have its own place. Some things will have to even do double duty. Are you okay with this? Would you be comfortable in the space? Is a 250 square foot tiny home good for you? Or do you need to bump things up to, like, say, a 330 square gooseneck home? Well, you don't know what I'm talking about when I say this? Oh, you will. Just wait. So I'd recommend this first off is that you go see a tiny home in person. I've included a link below of tiny home builders that you can contact or stop in, just see, get a look and feel of what a tiny home is really like. And this will help you gauge if it's something you can do or not. There's also another option. There are some places that allow you to rent out tiny homes and stay overnight, 1 or 2 nights. And that definitely will give you a feel of, like, can you really go tiny and would you be comfortable here? So those are some good ideas. And if you're in Pennsylvania area, I'll leave a link below so that you can click on that link and then make some reservations on your own. Now, let's talk finances. So, tiny homes are small, but they're not cheap. So, I found out. Of course, you could save costs by building it yourself, or maybe buying even a used tiny home. But to buy used, get a self built one, to build it yourself or not, any of those is really up to you. I really want to talk to you about acquiring a loan for these tiny homes. Did you know that even though it's meant to be your primary residence, that you can't secure a mortgage with a lending institution for a tiny home? Lending institutions consider a tiny home as a luxury item. Can you believe it? So they consider it as if you wanted to purchase an RV or a boat or something else of that nature. And so for that reason, you're really going to be requesting a personal loan. So with these personal loans, they can be as little as $1,000 on up to 100,000. That is the max at this time. And the loan can be paid back over time, anywhere from as short as 2 years up to 7 years. And so that, what does that mean? How does it translate? Well, basically, your payment could be anywhere from $1,385 by the month for the next 7 years if you took out a loan for that max amount, that 100K option. And that's, of course, depending on the interest rate. So it could go up from there or down, and depending on if you decided to put any money down. So it's quite a lot. You would think that with the tiny home, I'm going tiny, so I'm looking to reduce my expenses. Finding a location to my tiny home would be so tough. This is due to local zoning and coding regulations. What does that mean, really? Exactly, coding and zoning regulations. Well, coding refers to the unit or structure, and the local code wants to ensure that tiny homes have been built to a specific code. While on the other hand, zoning is really referring, managing to the size and dimension of the house itself. So of the tiny home, how big can it be? Or in this case, how small can it be to be termed a house? In either case, most zoning and coding regulations don't account for tiny homes in most cases. And so, because it's not on the books as a law or a regulation, that's why I'm being denied, or you might be denied, putting your tiny home on certain land. Now, some states have begun to account for this tiny homes in their regulations, but it's really few and far between. I'll be making a future video on how to start conversations with your local administration city planners to get tiny homes added to your local coding and zoning regulations if they're agreeable to work with you. So stay tuned for that. Now, some areas don't have zoning laws at all. So if you're in a place where tiny homes are legal, great. But for other areas where guidelines are less clear, you should have 2 to 3 options picked out as your location just in case one of them falls through. Now let's talk insurance. So we know that you want to insure your tiny home to make sure that in the event of something occurring that it's covered. Well, most insurance only insures a tiny home if built by a professional builder, or if it's happened to be certified as an RV. So if you have chosen to build your own tiny home, you may not be able to find a company that will secure your tiny home with insurance. You also have to consider that insurance when you even transport your home. So whatever your location is going to be, and you're not going to transport it yourself, it doesn't matter. In either case, you need to have insurance if that tiny home is moving. So that's something also that you'll need to think about, especially if you plan to just travel the U.S. or wherever in your tiny home. Insurance is going to play a big role for you. Now, normally your tiny home is covered though. If you chose a transportation company, they normally have insurance that covers whatever they're moving. So you may be okay there if you're just making an initial move, or maybe moving to a second location, but not that travel instance that I spoke of earlier. Now, lastly, let's talk inputs and outputs. I am still unclear about how to set up water, electric, and sewer at a property location. I knew to ask the landowners if they had a water sewer hookup, because that would tell me that I could at least have a flushing toilet and use local electrical services. But the owner didn't know how to set this all up, how to make it happen. I'd really have to rely on the expertise of licensed professionals who, right now, not many are familiar with tiny homes. So while they do have the profession of being a plumber or electrician, they still had a learning curve on trying to understand how they exactly should be hooking up for this tiny home once it gets to the location. So just beware of that. Another thing is you may choose the option to travel, and if so, you might have decided to stay at RV parks? And if so, this is a little bit simpler for you because you'll have electricity and you can just plug in to the electricity, but then you probably will have a composting toilet, or maybe you've decided that you'll use facilities outside. Not sure, but it depends on your tiny home design. So you really have to just be clear in mind if you're going to be living on the grid, off grid, and it's basically what's available at your location to help you manage your utilities. And don't forget, this also includes your heating and cooling systems. Now, these are not things that we're normally used to thinking about. And that's because if you've lived in an apartment or in a home, these things have already been decided for you and hooked up. So it's nothing that you ever had to make a decision about. So just remember that you probably want to get some professional guidance on this to help you better make those decisions. Well, that's all 5 today. There's more, of course, but that's enough to get you started. I really hope this information has been helpful and provided some insight in deciding if this lifestyle is really for you. So on this video, hit the red subscribe button below, as well as the bell icon, so you can be alerted when new videos are uploaded. Now, remember, I mentioned some links that I'm going to leave in the comments below, like how to rent a tiny home so you can try it out, even some tiny home listings of some used tiny homes that people are selling, as well as take a look at a financing link on how to finance tiny homes if you're ready to look into that. Just remember, this video is not sponsored by any other companies of the links I'm providing, but it's meant to just give you some options. So please leave any questions that you have below in the comments, and any tips that you found out to be helpful in your tiny home journey, so that we can learn from you. So as always, thanks for watching. See you next time.